Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 156, The Tabernacle, the Gospel According to Moses. Of course, being not Christian myself, not really believing in many tenets of the Bible, in Exodus, parts of it have been called into question. Nonetheless, I think this is one of the most complete works on the subject, specifically with regards to the temple itself, the Jewish temple, its form, its function, the symbolism. Literally, quite a bit of minutia in this work, very dense. Link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books blogs. There are a great many other works available there. If you're interested in the more academic side of sort of spirituality, there are other texts there. There are also some some primary sources, like I've got an edition of the Book of Tobit, for example. This is an excellent work. It's 123 pages, so it's relatively complete. I mean, it's basically single subject. I was very surprised at how much symbolism and minutia was here, and also allusions within the Bible itself, within the context of the Bible, explaining sort of these things, and then also certain Jewish works are alluded to as well, to sort of flesh it out. The temple, what the pillars are made of, the size being fully calculated, and so forth, what it was made of. Now, some of this is inferred, because you've got to understand, there are a few things left out. For instance, the roof of the temple, in the literal sense as described by the Bible, could not actually exist. It's impossible. It would, cave in on itself. It would make no sense. Something held it up. That's not explicitly described within the Bible itself, within the canonical materials there. Therefore, you can make an inference. There could be, a number of architectural traits here. And if you're interested in architecture, that's about half of this book. The other half is the symbolism. It's like here's where the altar is. Here's the division between the true Holy of Holies, the arks back there, and the more mundane room. Here's the courtyard sort of area around the temple. What does this suggest? The size of that. Here's the high priest's garments. Here's what the stones on it represent and everything else. It's quite elaborate, so you're not going to find, I think, a better work from its period with regards to this topic. This is of note within the occult. You've got to understand there are certain groups still waiting for the next Jewish temple to be built. An interesting side within maybe modern occultism, of course, I've spoken, I believe, several years ago on the occult topic of self-fulfilling prophecy, how that feeds into like doomsday prophecies. The Temple of Jerusalem certainly would be an aspect, not according to the Jews in a doomsday sense, but in accordance with certain third-party sort of Christian ideologies, could definitely be a sign of that. And so it's quite an interesting subject. It feeds into these others, connects to Kabbalah a bit. You can look at sort of the measurements and the numbering and the symbology. Symbology itself is what I'm most interested in, that and the architecture here. I like symbolism as a study. I find it fascinating. And it's, again, though, it's quite dense. You might have to read it a couple of times to fully appreciate and absorb it all. But definitely quite a good work. And by the way, written by George Junkin, actually a famous Presbyterian. He was actually there when the Presbyterian Church schismed. He was one of the main figures of that, arguing for the old, sort of more orthodox style of the church. And then it got, sort of pulled in half. At the time, he had a wonderful number of works during his life, quite a few, a fairly large collection. This is actually more of a compilation from speeches and sermons than it is a standalone, fully published work in that essence. It's a compilation that he, I believe himself, released at the time. We're talking the mid-1800s. So again, link in the description to my edition of this work, second and third links to my books, blogs. You can peruse it at your leisure. Again, highly recommend it if you're interested in, again, architecture, symbolism, anything like that. That's about all. Peace out.